Starting in 5 seconds. I am happy that the government has emphasized its commitment to non alignment, but in the process of their commitment to non alignment, they have tried to use the phrase genuine non alignment. I shall not quarrel with my friend about words, but what is non alignment? Non alignment is not a mantra. Non alignment is the basic fundamental right of every sovereign country. When we are not committed and there is no prior commitment to any power block, we take our decision on what our policy should be on its merits on any given issue, and if this cannot genuine, it cannot be non-alignment. So to use the word genuine non-alignment in a sense is a contradiction in term. In any case, I hope what he means by genuine and what we meant by genuine are the same, and there is no concrete difference in the word. Today, foreign relations do not cover only consular or diplomatic relations, they cover trade, economic development, technological cooperation, and many other things. Foreign relations also fall into different spheres and categories. It is needless for me to point out the importance of our relationships with the Soviet Union in many of these fields. Soviet Union has always stood by us in every hour of our crisis and in every problem that we have had to face. This can be said of a few other countries, and we reorganize this invaluable assistance. I shall not dilate on this. I am sure my friend understands what I am trying to convey. At the same time, I need not emphasize the necessity of our working out economic and developmental relations with the United States, Japan, West Germany, and other Western countries. They have the technology and they have the financial resources to play a leading role in giving assistance to all developing countries, but we have to recognize the complementary nature of any assistance that we can get either from the Soviet Union or from the Western countries. This complementary nature of assistance is very clear and it does not require any elaboration. There is one other aspect to which I would like to draw the attention of the Honorable Minister. This is very often forgotten. We are not really an underdeveloped country. Next to the United States and USSR, the largest reservoir of the technological skills do exist in India. It is unfortunate that we have not been able to utilize fully the technological manpower and trained skills that we have in this country in plenty. However, this very reservoir of technological skills and trained manpower can become a useful element and an asset in our foreign relations. We can, in certain fields, become an aid giving country. Giving of aid does not necessarily mean giving only financial aid. We can very well compete with the so called developed countries in certain fields through the export of our technology and skills, such as in sugar, in cement, in textiles, and in many other fields. In fact, we can probably be more helpful to the less developed countries than the highly developed and complex technologies of the West. This is a field which needs to be carefully explored in our foreign relations in the context of our extremely friendly relations which the honorable minister mentioned with countries like Iran and the Arab states. Our technical services can be offered to mutual advantage, and this could become an extremely useful cementing factors in our relations. This would apply with equal emphasis to the countries of Africa and Southeast Asia. While on this subject, I would like to give one interesting instance. One of my colleague in this house was telling me the other day that he once suggested that we take on the technical survey free of cost of the hydroelectric potential of Indonesia, and how this could have been a contribution from us to the development process of Indonesia. This is a field where we have the manpower, the skills and competence. I do not know that what became of this suggestion. Probably this is buried in bureaucratic files neatly tied up with red tape. I am not disclosing any secret. If I were to recall one of my own experiences in this context, some years ago I made a submission to the Ministry of External Affairs that we should consider assisting Zambia on the building of the railways. We did not take sufficient interest in this project. Finally, China took the work on hand and has now completed the job. Surely, if China could have done it, we would have also done it. Sir, I can only call it our lack of interest in the railways as an example of our bureaucratic indifferences and incompetence lying therein. If we had undertaken their railway, our Bhilai steel plant, locomotive works, and the coach factory would have been kept busy for at least 20 years. I presume that my friend might say that this should have been raised earlier. Stop. Starting in 5 seconds. Mr. Vice Chairman, sir, the constitutional pundits rightly pointed out that free and fair election is the essence of democracy. So, the government, which has faith in democracy, is expected to introduce necessary reforms to have free and fair elections. So, in the Constitution Amendment Bill 1988, as well as representations to the government, have taken some necessary measures to remove the defects in our electoral system and restore free and fair elections in our process. Sir, I extend my full support to the Constitution Amendment Bill 1988, which reduces the voting age from 21 years to 18 years. No doubt it is a drastic change, and there was a great demand for this change from the younger generation. But I am to remind this House that there are some state governments which have already introduced this change. Our government reduced the voting age from 21 years to 18 years. So, in consonance with that line, the central government has also come forward to reduce the age by amending the constitution. But here I would like to remind one thing that when the voting age was 21 years, it is quite common in all the states that so many voters at the age of 18, 19, or 20 years have enrolled their names. When you reduce the age from 21 years to 18 years, it is quite natural that the people who are at the age of 15 or 16 years may also come forward to enroll their names in the electoral rolls. To avoid this influx, I would like to appeal to the government that without any delay, the multi-purpose card must be introduced. I am glad that the government has given an assurance to introduce the identity card system. It is in the right direction, sir. The Honorable Minister, in the name of reforming the electoral process, has taken some steps to curb the rights of the states. For example, under Section 13, he has introduced a new section by which all the officers and members of the staff who are actually under the control of the state government are brought under the control of the election commission during the election period, and not only for control but also for discipline purpose and other purposes they are under their control. Sir, earlier they were assisting the election commission. There was no difficulty to the election commission, but now the central government want control on the officials and want to conduct the election with its own power. In the name of giving powers to the election commission, it has amended this. It has moved this proposal with a bad motive. The election commission, we know in theory, is an independent body. There is no doubt about that. But in practice, it is under the control and direction of the central government. If the government is very particular about this amendment, then my honest opinion is that it should have consulted the state governments before putting this proposal. But to the best of my information, this government has not consulted any state government. Without consulting the state governments, it has taken the officials of the state governments under its control. Sir, here a right move is regarding the recognition of political parties and definition of political parties. I am not against this clause, but the dangerous thing is this, which is a political party. The decision of the election commission is final on this question. That is a dangerous thing. There must be a room for decision by court. If the decision of the election commission is final, then there will be no democracy, because, as I stated earlier, we know by experience that the election commission is under the control and influence of the party in power at the center. This bill has included some more offenses to disqualify a candidate from contesting elections. In principle, I am not against this, but is it necessary? Why should we enlarge the number of grounds? There is no need at all. If anybody is convicted by the court. It is the people who reject him in the poll. Why do you unnecessarily increase the grounds for disqualification? It will give room for the talk that the government is always for restricted democracy and not for liberal democracy. We cannot give room for such suspicion or apprehension by the people. I am not against this in principle. Of course, in case of certain valid grounds, it may be necessary, but at the same time, if you enlarge the grounds in this way, the party in power, either at the center or in the states, will misuse the power to disqualify any contesting candidate. For example, one or two persons in a local area may be influential, but with the help of the local police, they may get punished, thereby preventing them from contesting the election. That is why the clause which include more grounds for disqualification must be deleted from this amendment. Stop. Starting in 5 seconds. Sir, this is the time to look at the performance of the journal fiscal situation. I have listened with some attention to the remarks from the opposition. Everybody is worried. I heard my friend speaking and the honorable members just now who spoke also and talked about the problems of the size of the deficit of the known plan expenditure, the question of continuing inefficiency of relatively less efficiency of public enterprises or the fear of the debt trap. These are familiar battle cries on the side of the opposition. At the same time, if you heard the earlier debates, the demand on behalf of the states for net added transfer of resources from the center to states is still growing. The pressure is mounting. There is a demand for additional subsidy and continuation of excise subsidies. Then, on the one side, we talk about efficiency in economic management. On the other side, we find different state governments and particularly some of the neighboring state governments indulging in populist approach towards repayment of loans from the banks or other sectors of the government. Now, it is very difficult to reconcile the economic rationality of the dream demand and the economic rationality of the comments that the opposition members are trying to make. Let us look at the hard facts. The question is whether the economy is growing in terms of growth rate of the GNP. This can be checked in terms of figures available here. The fact is that it is growing at a very fast pace. In fact, the expected rate of growth of real income in the current year is likely to be around 8%, which is much higher than what we have seen in the recent years. If you look at the sectoral composition of performance, thanks to the bountiful monsoon and a more imaginative agricultural strategy, particularly the food production, we are finding a better performance in the food production sector. Of course, we depleted our buffer stock, but as a result of the better crops and with some imports, we are trying to replenish our buffer stocks. Industrial growth has been very encouraging, although in the last few months there has been a tendency at deceleration, and we hope by the year end the things will level up and our performance in the industrial sector will be well above the recent performance. It should be crossing 10 to 11% mark altogether. I heard my friend talking about the consumer's price index. There is no doubt that there is rise in the consumer's price index and the consumer faces the real punch, but the increase has not been as alarming as we think, particularly if we look at the recent drought and the risk of likely increase in price which did not take place. Now, so far as the consumer's price index is concerned, it is closely related to the liquidity in the economy. It is true that the liquidity is growing because disposable income has been growing because of different kinds of payments that we have committed, whether it is in the fifth pay commission and the cascading effect of that in the rest of the economy, or the other salary settlements, dearness allowance, and all that. This leads to demand inflation. But on supply side, if our buffer stock position is right and releases are timely and adequate, all the operations both on the supply side and on the demand side of the buffer stock are efficient, that we should have no fears. It seems to me the very fact that the price index has not been rising at a very rapid pace shows that the supply management, so far as the essential commodities are concerned, has been somewhat efficient, and this has given us a relatively better balance with the demand. Now, so far as the wholesale price index is concerned, it is very encouraging. As a matter of fact, there was a slight pressure, but if you take the latest figures, there has been a deceleration there. What is particularly encouraging is that in the agricultural product group, the rate of increase in the wholesale price index has been much less compared to the non agricultural commodities group. However, the fact remains that the resource position of the government is under strain. When we talk of resource position, we talk of three components. Number one, what is the rate of the domestic savings, particularly the net figures, have been under stress. Fortunately, the household sector performance has been good, but the performance at the corporate sector level, and particularly the saving in the public sector of the corporate sector, has been discouraging, and much more discouraging has been the rate of the savings in the government sector. So, this is one area where substantial correction is required in order to generate adequate resource for investment. The second component is related to revenue. Now, if you take the total revenue picture, the direct taxes constitute 14% and indirect tax constitute 85%, which are increasing every year. Stop. Starting in 5 seconds. Madam, I do not have animosity towards that language, and I do not have any hatred towards that language. I have got great respect for the Hindi speaking people and for the Hindi language, but I will not give it more love and more respect that I would give to my language. I love my own language and my own mother tongue more than anything else. That is the point we are stressing. Is it not a fact that these people get more advantages because of this? In the year 1950, it was said that Hindi would be the official language of India and English also would continue. Then, in 1965, because of the agitation in the South, they extended it for another 10 years, and now they say that Hindi would be the sole official language. If at all a person is to be considered really an Indian, he should tolerate the Hindi imposition and he must read and write in that language. That is what it comes to. Then, madam, they say that Hindi is spoken by a majority of the people. What is majority or minority here? It is a sentimental issue and it should not be treated as a majority or minority issue. This has to be considered and treated as a matter of justice and truth. They should consult the people of South India on this issue. Fretting and fuming should not be the policy, and vindictiveness and vituperation should not be the policy. This is the real feeling of the people of the southern part of the country. Now, Madam More Speaker just now mentioned that if you simply go into the markets of Chennai, you will find the people speaking in Hindi and understanding Hindi. Then I tell you one more thing about the Hindi language. I tell you one more thing about the Hindi language. They talk about majority and minority. What is majority? Majority means 51% of the population of this country who are speaking Hindi, but even according to the census report, it was stated that 42% of this country are in opposition to understand Hindi. Even among this 42%, there are other groups belonging to the languages like Punjabi, Urdu, etc. as such and so on. Even among this 42%, everybody is not in opposition to understand Hindi at all, even if that percent includes the people scattered all over the country throughout the length and breadth of the country. I can understand, but these people are confined to 3 or 4 states only, that is Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Bihar, and Uttar Pradesh, simply because some people somewhere in the northern part of the country understand this language. You cannot ask the persons from the southern part of this country to accept it, and you cannot ask the people from the southern part of the country, particularly the Tamilians, to learn this language and accept this as the sole official language, read this constitutional language, and follow this language, do all the day to day transactions and other transactions, political or social, in that language. I have a very good language, a language which is very ancient. I do not know when it was born. It was born even before the appearance of mud and stone, a language spoken by my forefathers, a language in which our poets have given sermon and written scriptures, a language in which not only sermons and scriptures are available in plenty, but thousands and thousands of literary works and novels are there. But I am not asking that language to be introduced as the sole official language for the whole of this country. If at all anybody has to come forward and ask others to learn a particular language, it is I who should ask them to learn this language, but nobody would come forward and say, let us introduce Tamil as the sole official language. Why don't you think that if you are really an Indian, you should have that important language which is your language? And if you should, and if you at all are an Indian, you should accept that important language also. Madam, in our constitution, we have accepted the community called the Anglo Indian community. We have accepted that community in our constitution, and that Anglo Indian community is a minority community, and that minority community speaks English and English language as its mother tongue. Then is it not the bounden duty of the citizens of India to think that English, which is spoken by this community and which community has been accepted in the constitution, is also accepted as one of the official languages? Madam, English is not the mother tongue of the Britishers alone. They had also to import many words from so many sources, and English has become a very wonderful thing, and it has now become a language which is understood by the entire world. It is a language through which we can understand technical know how. Stop. Starting in 5 seconds. I have great pleasure in associating myself with the Silver Jubilee celebrations of the Chandigarh Press Club. Chandigarh is the symbol of a new India. It is the city beautiful. At the time of its creation, Jawaharlal Nehru declared, let Chandigarh be the first large expression of our genius flowering on our newly earned freedom. The representation, the indomitable spirit of the people of Punjab and Haryana, the city has symbolized the resurgence of modern India. In keeping with this vibrancy, the media in Punjab has also been at the forefront of journalism in our country. Many of our finest journalists at the national level cut their teeth here in Chandigarh. This city has been a fine training ground for journalists. Today morning, I had the privilege of attending the 125th anniversary celebrations of the Tribune. The Tribune was born in Lahore, but it blossomed here in Chandigarh. It did so because Chandigarh provided the intellectual, social, and political environment in which media could freely develop and grow. I salute Chandigarh and the people of Chandigarh. May your city continue to grow as a role model in all walks of life. I would like to pay a special tribute to the media in Punjab and indeed in neighboring Jammu and Kashmir for standing up to the forces of terrorism and anti national forces and for defending democracy and democratic values. I have always believed in the importance of a free press. It is the ultimate check against the tyranny of authority. As I have often said, I do sincerely believe that there is no grievance, howsoever extreme and desperate, that cannot be redressed through democratic means. Our democracy gives everyone the right to articulate any grievance in a democratic manner. However, no civilized society can tolerate violence and extremism of any form based on any divisive ideology cannot be tolerated in any civilized democratic society. Any group that claims to represent the interest of a people must be willing to its popularity through democratic means and accept the people's verdict. It is through the legislature and in the media that public opinion has to be won over to a cause, not by killing innocent people, not by denying media its freedom to survey news and views. My journalists have defended the freedom of the press against the tyranny of terrorism, bigotry, and separatism. They were willing to do this by paying with their lives. We are proud of our media and its contribution to shaping public opinion for nation building and social change. The high standards of journalism prevailing in our country, in spite of the commercial pressures on media, testify to the robust traditions of independent journalism. Our free press has emerged as an important guarantor of democratic and human rights. Our media has given voice to the voiceless. It has ensured that every minority and marginal group is heard, is seen, is involved in the mainstream. Media has been described as the last line of defense for freedom and democracy. Media holds a mirror to society. It constitutes an early warning system. Its assessments on numerous policies alert the nation to the prevailing situation and signal us to be mindful of the future challenges and opportunities. However, with the rapid growth of media in recent times, qualitative development has not kept step with quantitative growth. In the race for capturing markets, journalists have been encouraged to cut corners, to take chances, to hit and run. I believe the time has come for journalists to take stock of how competition has impacted upon quality. Consider the fact that even one mistake and a resultant accident can debar an airline pilot from ever pursuing his career. Consider the case that one wrong operation leading to a life lost, and a doctor can no longer inspire the confidence of his patients. One night of sleeping on the job at a railway crossing, an avoidable train accident, and a railwayman gets suspended. How many mistakes must a journalist make? How many wrong stories? How many motivated columns before professional claims are placed? How does the financial media deal with market moving stories that have no basis in fact? Investors gain and loss, markets rise and fall. But what happens to those reporters, analysts, editors who move and make market? Are there professional codes of conduct that address these challenges? Is the Press Council the right organization to address these challenges? Can professional organizations of journalists like the Press Club, for example, play a role? I have often heard it said that the press club is just a watering hole, a meeting place, and nothing more. However, I am impressed by the fact that the Chandigarh Press Club is aspiring to be more. You have built conference faculties, facilities, meeting rooms. You can bring these buildings alive by making use of them to reflect, to discuss, to debate among yourselves. Where is media headed? How can you reach global professional standards? This is important when we have to deliberate and take same positive stand for the future. Stop. Starting in 5 seconds. Sir, I rise to support the bill brought forward by the Honorable Deputy Minister in the Ministry of Finance. Banking is a service of vital importance to industry, commerce, and agriculture. It is concerned with the creation of credit money and its distribution between various users such as industry and agriculture, or between institutions and individuals. In fact, the smooth working of a modern economy depends on the proper regulation of credit with which the banks are concerned. The question, therefore, of recruitment of the personnel of banking institutions assumes great importance. The Banking Commission has recommended the establishment of such a commission in its report in 1972. In fact, government have been rather late in bringing forward this very important and necessary piece of legislation. Before nationalization, some of the big commercial banks had made some arrangements of their own for retirement of their staff. The Institute of Bank Management and the Reserve Bank of India, through the Bankers Training College, run some short term and long term courses for recruitment and training of bank staff, but these arrangements are not adequate even to meet the requirements for recruitment of higher cadres. The largest proportion of bank's staff consist of clerks and cashiers. The recruitment policies followed by most of the Indian banks before nationalization were not based on either scientific lines. In several cases, even minimum qualifications were not insisted upon. The Banking Commission has reported that in many cases, people who had not even passed matriculation examination were recruited as clerk. There was no proper evaluation of the aptitude or capacity, and very often caste and relationship determined the choice of candidates. Lack of training facilities, however, aggravated the problem, and banks found themselves with staff which had neither aptitude nor ability to carry out the jobs assigned to them. The bill, therefore, is welcome. It seeks to provide for proper methods of selection for recruitment. It provides for the establishment of a body corporate to be called the Banking Service Commission. It shall be the duty of the Commission to hold competitive examination to recruit people for clerical and allied cadres, junior officers, cadre, and such other officers, cadre, as the central government may by notification specify. It shall consist of a chairman and persons who, in the view of the government, are men of integrity, ability, and have experience of finance and business administration. The bill rightly attaches great importance to selection of people for the clerical cadre because the clerical staff constitute the largest proportion of the total manpower, and it is they who give the banking service to the people. Rapid expansion of banking ensures further that many of them will soon get promotion to the officers cadre. It has been estimated that every clerk can hope to reach the officers cadre in 10 or 12 years' time. Every clerk is therefore a potential officer, but to be effective, recruitment should be attempt to attract appropriate skills and attitude, and search for suitable talent should not be restricted to the first point of entry in the bank at the clerical level. It should so be extended to attract sufficient number of persons who possess executive skill. With the functional enlargement of the banks, they require the service of experts such as agricultural scientists and those who are experts in engineering. Recruitment of such personnel should also be considered by the Banking Commission. A provision in the bill enables the government to increase the proportion of such junior staff from 25% to 33%. In my view, it is a welcome provision. There is a provision that a certain percentage shall be reserved for scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. This percentage has to be determined according to the general principles and also the requirements of the banks. One provision says that the commission will have certain advisory functions. It is an important provision. We know how in government service very difficult problems of promotion and seniority arise. It is better that they are solved by a third body rather than the superior officers who have sometimes prejudices against people working under them. I hope this provision will be used for that purpose. I will not take any more time of the House by dilating on the details of the bill. I hope the honorable members will accept the basic idea of the bill. I hope the honorable members will accept the basic idea behind bill. The establishment of a commission on the lines envisaged will impart objectivity and impartiality in the recruitment procedures of the banks by prescribing uniform qualifications and eligibility standards applicable in all public sector banks and thereby help to tap the right type of persons for the banking industry. Finally, there is a last clause which says that the government may extend the provisions of this bill to other banks if the Banking Service Commission should cover the recruitment of other commercial banks also, so much the better. We will have uniform standards for recruitment of personnel in all the banks. With these words, I support the bill. Stop. Starting in 5 seconds. On behalf of the respondent, it was urged that the check was given for repayment of the aforementioned loan amount of rupees 30 crore, for which the accused company agreed to repay the principal amount in two installments, with the first installment of rupees 10 crore payable on 31st March 2015 and the second installment of rupees 20 crore. The accused company had to pay interest at 15% per annum on the said principal amount of loan, and such interest was payable monthly on the 15th day of every month, which was in consonance with the dates and the check amount. It was urged that the accused company, along with the appellant, deliberately and with the malified intention, gave the check to defraud the respondent, to take loan from it, and subsequently to usurp the loan amount, and hence had closed the bank account. The appellant, being the signatory, was directly liable along with the accused company. The appellant was actively involved in the day to day affairs of the company, as can be inferred from the aforementioned loan agreement signed by him as well. We may note that some of the SLPs being withdrawn in respect of the SLPs in question, the interim order was made absolute with the direction for urgent listing as criminal proceedings had been stayed. Learned counsel for the parties stated that they will file short synopses not running into more than 3 pages each and will not take more than 15 to 20 minutes each for their respective submissions. On the basis of the aforesaid, we heard the arguments when we granted leave and reserved the judgment. The appellant had submitted that synopsis in advance. The respondent, however, despite assuring that they would submit the synopsis, has not cared to do so, and we have gone on the basis of the record. This position is prevalent right, and we do not consider it appropriate to wait anymore. We assume that the respondent is not interested in rendering any further assistance to the court by filing synopsis. Fortunately for them, for the reasons to be recorded hereinafter, they have not really suffered the consequences thereof. The issue whether the respondent is a secured financial creditor or an unsecured financial creditor within the meaning of the said code is not something we can deal with the proceedings under the said code or any appeal preferred therefrom. The only issue with which we are concerned with is whether during the pendency of the proceedings under the said code which have been admitted, the present proceedings under the NI Act can continue simultaneously or not. We have no hesitation in coming to the conclusion that the scope of nature of proceedings under the two acts and quite different and would not intercede each other. In fact, a bare reading of Section 14 of the IPC would make it clear that the nature of proceedings which have to be kept in abeyance do not include criminal proceedings, which is the nature of proceedings under Section 138 of the NI Act. We are unable to appreciate the plea of the learned counsel for the appellant that because Section 138 of the NI Act proceedings arise from a default in financial debt and proceedings under Section 138 should be taken as akin to civil proceedings rather than criminal proceedings. We cannot lose sight of the fact that Section 138 of the NI Act are not recovery proceedings, they are penal in character. A person may face imprisonment or fine or both under Section 138 of the NI Act. It is not a recovery of the amount with interest as a debt recovery proceedings would be. They are not akin to suit proceedings. It cannot be said that the process under the IBC, whether under Section 31 or Section 38 to 41, which can extinguish the debt, would ipso facto apply to the extinguishment of the criminal proceedings. No doubt, in terms of the scheme under the IBC, there are sacrifices to be made by parties to settle the debts, the company being liquidated or revitalized. The appellant before us has been dropped in as a signatory of the check as well as the promoter and managing director of the accused company which availed of the loan. The loan agreement was also signed by him on behalf of the company. What the appellant seeks is escape out of a criminal liability having defaulted in payment of the amount at a very early stage of the loan. In fact, the loan amount itself was closed. So much for the bona fides of the appellant. We are unable to accept the plea that if proceedings against the company come to an end, then the appellant, as the managing director, cannot be proceeded against. We are unable to accept the plea that Section 138 of the NI Act proceedings are primarily compensatory in nature and that the punitive element is incorporated only at enforcing the compensatory proceeding. Stop. Starting in 5 seconds. My interest in basic education goes back to the day when Mahatma Gandhi convened a conference at Wardha for discussing this subject. A few prominent educationists and workers in the cause of national education had also been invited to attend this conference. I have been in touch with the progress of this system of education ever since. I am therefore happy to have got this opportunity to come here and speak to you about this problem, although I know I might be repeating the views expressed by me earlier. It also likely that the views which I express are not in consonance with those of others, particularly of educationists. Besides, it is also to be seen how far my views fit in with the policy which is being pursued by the central and state governments in this connection, and how far it is practicable to modify that policy. Therefore, I hope what I am going to say will be taken as my personal opinion and that you will discuss it as such with an open mind without fear or favor. It will be agreed that the system of education, right from the first primary class to the highest university course which we are following today, is the same as introduced by the British government in this country. We have not been able to introduce any fundamental change in that system even after the attainment of independence. It is pointless to blame anyone for it because the peaceful manner in which the transfer of power took place made it inevitable that, along with the governmental machinery and other things, the system of education should also come to us as a heritage of the old regime. It is now our duty to give thought to each one of these problems and decide, in the light of present day conditions, how they can be solved, and then to act upon what we have discussed. There is no doubt that in introducing this system of education, the principal motive of the British government was to secure as much advantage as possible for establishing itself in this country. The Britishers also thought that, as compared to their own culture and literature, there was nothing much in Indian culture and literature which might be said to be worth preserving. There is no doubt in course of time their views underwent some change. The progress of science in Europe meanwhile confirmed them in their view that scientific education could be imparted only through the medium of English. Consequently, partly for the sake of administrative convenience and partly to propagate their own language and culture, they stick to their own system of education which they introduced in this country. There is no doubt that the education received by our earlier generations was based on this very system. Those people knew little of Indian literature or culture and hardly felt drawn towards it, although a few Indian scholars who were inspired by English education did study Indian literature and wrote a good deal in praise of it. Thus, we find two schools of thought in this country. The followers of one school believe that our own language alone can be the medium of education, and until that is done, education is bound to remain confined to a small section of society and will never spread among the masses. The other school of thought thinks that in this scientific age, our country cannot cut itself adrift from European thought, and that at least higher education should continue to be imparted through the medium of English. If that is not done, they argue, we shall fail to pull our weight and lag behind other nations in the race for material progress. These views, as a matter of fact, apply not only to the medium of instruction but actually to the whole system of education. Our people have responded more and more to the call education during the last 50 years, and this is evident from the phenomenal increase in the number of educational institutions in 1911-12, when Burma was and Pakistan were also part of India. There were 186 universities and colleges in India as compared with 537 in 1946-49, though Burma and Pakistan had separated, leaving India smaller in area and population. It is clear from the figures that there is a widespread demand for educational facilities. This demand is no longer confined to towns alone but is evident among people of the rural areas also. One result of this spread of education has been that many educated people find themselves unemployed. Government jobs and service in private undertakings offer limited openings for the educated. Only a small fraction of successful scholars can be absorbed in them. A large majority of the educated are averse to taking up their parental occupations. As a result of their education, they have lost the capacity to take up those occupations, and they are not equipped to follow any other either. Stop. Starting in 5 seconds. Sir, coming to the technical education, I may point out there are many colleges without infrastructure. Several colleges have been running without any facilities. You have to do something so that these colleges acquire the necessary infrastructure. NPE also spoke about the capitation fees charged by these engineering and medical institutions in the interest of maintaining standards, etc. Commercialization of technical education should be curbed. The All India Council of Technical Education has been given this task, but today 8 engineering colleges in Bihar, 27 in Karnataka, 52 in Maharashtra, 22 in Tamil Nadu, and about 5 medical colleges in Karnataka are still collecting high capitation fees. You have promised to bring forward a central bill, but so far it has not been brought. More and more such colleges are proliferated every day. In Maharashtra, particularly, there is a mushroom growth of such technical institutions. I would like to know whether it is advisable to allow such institutions to come up. The minister should ponder over these. So far, we are having only 5 IITs. They are maintaining good standards. I understand you are going to have the sixth one in Assam. Its progress is very low. When I went to Assam, the Assam Chief Minister said that only the site has been identified but no progress has been made. It should be given a fillip. In addition, I suggest one more IIT should be started in Hyderabad because it is a central place easily accessible to many people. The minister need not feel shy about it. It can be had even in Rangal and anywhere else, but we need one more IIT. Similarly, the number of Indian institutes of management is also very less. Such institutes are only 4 in number. If you cannot open an IIT, you open IIM in Hyderabad. That is my specific request to the Honorable Minister. You are financing a number of other organizations, the Indian Council of Social Science Research, the Indian Council of Philosophical Research, the Indian Institute of Advanced Studies, Shimla Eda, Indian Council of Historical Research. I know some of them are doing a good work, but I do not know if the money allotment is just sufficient for salaries and maintenance of the buildings. Therefore, a review of the allotment and a committee to review the functioning is needed. The minister knows that the administrative staff college in Hyderabad is a premier institution running on excellent lines, but you have given just rupees 2.5 lakhs as grant in this year's budget. I suggest such an organization must be encouraged. Similarly, for the scientist going abroad, you have provided only rupees 1.25 lakh in the budget. It is a very small amount. This should be increased. The Education Ministry should lay more stress on the extracurricular activities of the students. Study tours, excursions, the NCC, and the NSS should be given encouragement. The earn as you learn has also to be encouraged. It has not picked up in your country, but we should give more encouragement to this scheme because in a poor country like ours, there are many students from the middle class families. If you can introduce a scheme like Earn as you learn, at least in some centers, on an experimental basis, that would be helpful. Regarding the role of the student unions, also you must review because in certain universities like Delhi University and some other universities, elections to these unions are comparable to the general election, and most of the time of the students is being lost in the direct elections. In earlier days, the student unions were formed by indirect elections. The class leaders used to be elected, and those leaders used to elect the executive of the union. Whether we should go back to that system should be examined because of the role of the students' union. I do not want abolishing of the unions as a whole, but a different method for elections to these unions must be examined. Then I strongly oppose any more move for an all India service in education. If you have got any thought like that, we will firmly oppose it, and all the non Congress states are opposed to any new all India service, particularly in education, because teachers going from one place to another would not help. It will not help at all. Regarding adult education, also the literacy rate in 1951 was 16%, and it has just come to 36% in 1981 after 30 years. Just you have 20% increase. There are still 425 million illiterates in this country, and if you take the 15-35 years age group, they are now 210 million. It is a very explosive situation. You must do something to remove adult illiteracy. Voluntary organizations should be encouraged to take up this task. Stop.